I'm Tiffany, and this is Towering TBR. So I have read 10 books in the month of February and DNF 2. I can only talk about 7 of them because 3 of them were prize books, but be looking out for that vlog. It should drop in early April. So I will start with the DNFs. The first book I DNF'd, which means did not finish, was What Doesn't Kill You by Tessa Miller. And this was actually a 5-star prediction. I really thought I would like this. I really enjoy disability memoirs. But part of my chronic illness is persistent nausea. And so I don't have the stomach that I once had when I was able to read things. Her book focused on her getting a diagnosis of Crohn's, which is a digestive issue. And she was very descriptive in talking about her illness, and unfortunately, I couldn't stomach it. I am not saying it's a bad book by any means. I just couldn't read past some of her descriptions. The other book that I DNF'd was this beautiful graphic novel, Ashes, by Alvaro Ortiz. So the premise of this graphic novel is that these 4 friends know each other, but have been they've gone their separate ways. And the 4th person in the friendship dies and asks his 3 other friends to spread his ashes somewhere. So it's a road trip story. And I think the art is really beautiful. I will show some inserts here. But unfortunately, the story just never seemed to get going. We would go back into the lives of the individual person. It felt like we weren't really getting any useful information and there wasn't much intrigue. The other reason I had to DNF it is because the boxes got really, really small, which made it really difficult to read. I get migraines, which affect my vision, and so I have to take into consideration the size of the boxes. So I quit this, I think, let's see, what page was it? Yeah, page 70. So I felt like in 70 pages, nothing had really happened. Because I drew for my TBR game to read a disability memoir, and because I decided not to finish Tessa Miller's, I picked up a different disability memoir called The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating by Elisabeth Tova Bailey. This focuses on a time when she got really chronically ill, so ill that she was bedbound. Her friend sets up this plant that has a snail on it, and she just observes the snail. When I say she's bedbound, I mean it's an adventure just to roll over. Partly it's disability memoir, and partly it's really informative about snails. I learned so much about snails that I didn't know. And this is for a lot of people, I would understand if they described it as boring. It is very minute observations and changes, and it's a lot about thinking of herself as a disabled person. There were a few quotes I wanted to share. Given the ease with which health infuses life with meaning and purpose, it is shocking how swiftly illness steals away those certainties. It was all I could do to get through each moment, and each moment felt like an endless hour, yet days slipped silently past. Time unused and only endured still vanishes, as if time itself is starving, and each day is swallowed whole, leaving no crumbs, no memory, no trace at all. When you don't feel well, time seems to drag on endlessly. Another quote that she had about time was, "My illness brought me an abundance of time. That time was nearly all I had. My friends had so little time, I often wished I could give them what time I could not use. It was perplexing how losing health, I had gained something so coveted, but to so little purpose." I really related to this book. I want to share one more quote. Actually, I'm going to share a lot more quotes because I wrote down a lot. How wonderful it could be If we humans with illnesses could simply go dormant like the scientific world went about its snail-paced research and wake up only when new safe medical treatments were available. But why limit that amazing ability to the ill? When a country faced famine, what if the entire population could go dormant to get through a hard time in a safe and peaceful way until the next growing season came around? She had just been talking about how snails can basically go dormant for a really long time if there isn't enough food or if there's a resource that they can't get. They can seal themselves up. It would be nice if we had that advantage. I also connected with her feelings of isolation. When you first get sick, a lot of people will usually care about you and show interest. But after you've been sick a really long time, I think they just move on. And even if you're not better, and it can be really isolating. And so I wanted to read this. There is a certain depth of illness that is piercing in its isolation. The only rule of existence is uncertainty, and the only movement is the passage of time. One cannot bear to live through another loss of function, and sometimes friends and family cannot bear to watch. An unspoken, unbridgeable divide may widen. Even if you are still who you were, you cannot actually fully be who you are. And the people you know well withdraw, and then even the person you know as yourself begins to change. There were times when I'd wished that my viral invader had claimed me entirely. And then she also quotes Atul Gawande, all human beings experience isolation as torture. Illness isolates, the isolated become invisible, the invisible become forgotten. But the snail kept my spirits from evaporating. I actually wrote down many more quotes than that, but I think that gives you a real good insight into what to expect if you want to read this book. Because it was so snail focused, I would occasionally lose interest and kind of have to push myself to keep reading. And so for that reason, I'm going to give it a 3.5 star. But a lot of what she talked about in her illness really resonated with me, and I thought it was beautiful. And yeah, it's a very chill book. I also read The Angel Maker by Alex North. This has its own review, and I will link it up in the cards and in the description below if you want to check it out. But basically, this is the third Alex North book I've read, and this was the first one that really disappointed me. I gave it 2 stars. I felt like there were too many threads and not enough intrigue or tension or anything. So yeah, I didn't enjoy that, but I can give you more reasons if you want to watch the video. The last book that I read that I don't physically own yet is The Black Tides of Heaven by Neon Yang. This is a fantasy novella about these 2 twins. In this society, everybody is kind of non-binary until they choose a gender. And these twins make an agreement to stay non-binary together. But then one of them decides that she wants to identify as female. And that is kind of what is expected of the other twin. But he goes his own way and becomes male. And afterward leaves the kingdom. And it's the story about these 2 twins and what they're doing. And there's some political intrigue and some spies and rebels, and it was enjoyable. I wish there had been more world building, but since there are other books in this universe, I can check those out whenever I'm feeling like I want a bit more. On to some books I enjoyed. The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. This was my classic this month, and oh my goodness, this was so good. I ended up giving it 4 stars. The premise is 4 Chinese women have immigrated to San Francisco, and they get together and play mahjong. And they talk about what it's like to have immigrated, what it's like to have their daughters who were born in America and so identify as American and not Chinese. The book opens with one of the women has died and her daughter has gone to the mahjong game to replace her mother. And in doing so, we kind of get the backstories of all of the mahjong players, especially in relationship to their daughters. They very much want their daughters to be more American, and they don't want them to be bullied. But in becoming more American, they give up things that the Chinese mother thinks are important in their heritage and culture. And it's almost not really even a novel, because we go back into 4 different women's stories. It really feels more like interconnected short stories. But I thought it was beautiful, and the examination of their relationships was really illuminating. And even though I know this book came out well before Crying in H Mart, some of the writing and sentiment between mothers and daughters, even though Michelle's honor is Korean, I believe, but in her memoir, she had some really similar feelings about her mother. And so if you like that, you might want to try this. Although, maybe I'm the last one to get to it because it's been out for a long time. I also read 438 Days by Jonathan Franklin. This was such a ride. This is the true story of a shark fisherman and his second in command. I don't know what they're called on boats, but their journey of being out in the open ocean for 438 days, surviving on turtle and fish and birds if they can catch them, and the relentless storms and the sea salt spray and the baking heat. It really felt like you were there. What's interesting is my husband actually knew about this story because he had seen it on a YouTube channel called Thoughty2. And after I read this book, I watched that video with him, and they acted out pretty well. So if you're one that's like, that's interesting, but I'd rather watch it, I'll link it down below. So anyways, this was just a fascinating tale, and I was really excited I got to it. It does get a bit redundant in places. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars and would highly recommend. I also read Cibola Burn by James S.A. Corey. This is the 4th in the Expanse novel. There's not a whole lot I can really tell you, but I will say that this book is mostly set on a new planet, and the new planet has lots of surprises. And my 5-star of the month, Blankets by Craig Thompson. This is a coming-of-age graphic novel that's huge. And this focuses on Craig. He is growing up in a Midwestern family who is really religious. And we kind of focus on him growing up. And then he goes to church camp and meets this girl. And so he arranges to go visit her for a couple weeks over Christmas. It's through meeting her that he starts to really analyze his life. Is he happy? Is he doing what he wants to do? Does he really believe in religion, or was it something he was born into? There's a lot of questioning, a lot of trying to figure out who he is and what he wants to be. I related to it quite a lot, and I just loved it. So I gave it 5 stars, and I'm going to check out other things that he has written because this was phenomenal. What was the best book you read in February? Let's have a chat in the comments down below. Thanks. Bye.